I've lived alone with a Bigfoot in the Olympic Mountains for 47 years. What I've documented about their intelligence and society would revolutionize science overnight. But after recording this confession, I know I won't survive to see the morning. The evidence I've gathered threatens too many powerful people who prefer this secret stays buried, along with those who discover it. My name is Dr. James Harrison. I'm 81 years old, a retired primatologist with degrees from Stanford and Cornell, and former department chair at the University of Washington's anthropology program. My credentials include published work on great ape communication systems and cognitive development in non-human primates. I mention this not out of vanity, but so you understand, I approached what I'm about to share with scientific rigor, despite how fantastic it sounds. On April 16, 1974, during what should have been routine fieldwork documenting indigenous cultural sites in the remote northern reaches of the Olympic Peninsula, I encountered something that defied everything I'd been taught. The day had turned misty, with that peculiar Pacific Northwest quality of light that renders distances deceptive. I was photographing a series of unusual rock formations when I heard a sound unlike anything in my experience, a low, resonant vocalization that seemed to emanate from the forest itself. I froze, my Nikon F2 still raised to my eye. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no insects, just the soft patter of mist collecting on sword ferns. Then I caught movement between two ancient cedars approximately 73 yards away. At first, my brain attempted to categorize: bear, elk, perhaps a misidentified moose. But as the figure stepped partially into a clearing, those categories collapsed. It stood approximately 8 feet 6 inches tall, with a frame that suggested a weight of 750 to 800 pounds. Covered in dark reddish-brown hair, it moved with a fluidity that belied its massive size. Its face, I hesitate even now, possessed features that were neither human nor ape, but some remarkable intersection of both. Pronounced brow ridge, deep-set eyes, a sagittal crest reminiscent of gorilla morphology, yet a facial structure and expressions unmistakably sentient. For 3 minutes and 42 seconds, timed later from my audio recorder that captured the encounter, we simply observed each other. My scientific training battled with primal fear, but curiosity won. When it finally retreated into the forest, I stood trembling, clutching my camera that inexplicably contained no images. The film had jammed, I told no one. What reputable scientist would report a Bigfoot sighting without evidence? Instead, I meticulously documented everything in a separate field journal and altered my research schedule to return to the location regularly. Over subsequent months, I encountered the creature 5 more times, each meeting lasting longer. I began leaving small food offerings, dried salmon, apples, nuts, which would disappear overnight. By November 1974, the creature I eventually named Echo would wait for me, observing from a consistent distance of 50 to 60 yards. "I know you're intelligent," I finally said aloud during our 7th encounter, "and I believe you understand more than most humans would credit." Echo tilted his head. I'd determined the sex through binocular observation, and made a gesture I would come to recognize as acknowledgement. That moment marked the beginning of a relationship that would span nearly 5 decades, reshape my understanding of intelligence and consciousness, and ultimately, I fear, cost me my life. What follows is my testimony of living alongside a species that official science denies exists, that certain government agencies actively work to conceal, and that deserves protection from the very beings who should be championing its discovery: humans. By the spring of 1975, our encounters had developed a predictable rhythm. I would arrive at what I came to think of as our meeting place, a small clearing bordered by Douglas firs and western hemlocks about 4.7 miles from the nearest logging road, bringing offerings of food and sitting quietly with my journal. Echo would appear after 15 to 20 minutes, first watching from the tree line before gradually approaching. Those early meetings were exercises in patience and scientific observation. I documented everything. His gait, bipedal but with a distinctive rolling motion suggesting specialized adaptations to mountainous terrain. Hand morphology, 5 fingers with opposable thumbs capable of complex manipulation. Facial expressions, at least 18 distinct emotional indicators, and vocalizations, ranging from infrasonic rumbles barely perceptible to human ears to complex series of clicks and whistles. Echo stood 8 feet 6 inches tall, with a chest circumference I estimated at 82 inches. His weight, based on footprint depth analysis, was approximately 790 pounds. His hair, a deep russet brown that lightened slightly in summer months, covered his body except for his face, palms, and the soles of his feet. His eyes, perhaps his most striking feature, were amber with distinctive horizontal pupils that seemed to capture more light than human eyes. An adaptation to nocturnal activity. My background in primate communication proved invaluable as I began developing a system to bridge our worlds. I started with simple gestures, pointing, offering, showing, and Echo demonstrated remarkable aptitude, not just mimicking but expanding upon the communications. By autumn 1975, we had established a rudimentary shared vocabulary of 37 distinct signs and sounds. "You're learning me faster than I'm learning you," I remarked during one session, as Echo correctly interpreted my request to examine a pine cone he had brought from deeper in the forest. He responded with what I'd come to recognize as his expression of amusement, a soft huffing sound accompanied by a particular tilt of his head. The breakthrough came in February 1976, during a snowstorm that had blanketed the Olympic Mountains in 2 feet of powder. I had nearly canceled my expedition, but scientific curiosity drove me forward through treacherous conditions. When I finally reached our clearing, Echo was waiting, seemingly unconcerned by the weather. As I struggled to set up my small observation tent with numbed fingers, he approached closer than ever before, just 12 feet away, and deliberately demonstrated how to secure the structure against the wind, piling snow around its base in a technique I hadn't considered. "You're helping me," I said, the revelation hitting me with unexpected force. This wasn't just mimicry or learned behavior. It was problem-solving and altruism. Echo made a gesture I hadn't seen before, touching his chest and then pointing to me. Later, I would understand this meant connection or alliance. The months that followed transformed my research entirely. I abandoned the pretense of my original anthropological survey and dedicated myself to documenting Echo. My academic colleagues noticed my withdrawal from conferences and publication circles, but I deflected with vague references to specialized field research. Dr. Melinda Thornton, my department chair, confronted me over dinner in Seattle. "James, you've changed. Whatever you're working on has consumed you. Is it worth your career?" I smiled, thinking of Echo demonstrating how to weave cedar bark into a waterproof covering. "It's worth every scientific principle we hold dear," I replied. "But the world isn't ready." She studied me with concern. "Be careful. Some discoveries have consequences beyond academic circles." How prophetic her warning would prove. By 1978, I had established semi-regular contact with Echo 3 days each week. What began as scientific curiosity had evolved into something science had no proper term for. A cross-species friendship that would ultimately reveal secrets powerful forces had worked for decades to suppress. The summer of 1983 marked a turning point in my relationship with Echo. By then, our communication system had grown to include over 200 distinct signs, sounds, and gestures. I had taken early retirement from the university, citing a desire to focus on independent research. My colleagues held a modest farewell gathering, unaware that my true work was just beginning. During an unusually warm July evening, as I documented Echo demonstrating how to strip bark from a cedar tree, he suddenly grew alert. His head lifted, nostrils flaring as he scented the air. Without warning, he gestured urgently for me to follow him, something he had never done before. We traveled deeper into the forest than I had ever ventured, moving steadily uphill for nearly 2 hours. The old-growth forest gave way to steeper terrain until we reached a sheltered valley nestled between two ridges. There, in a clearing bordered by a small stream, I saw something that stole my breath away. 3 adult Bigfoot and 2 juveniles moved about what could only be described as a camp. Constructed shelters made of interwoven branches formed dome-like structures against a cliff face. One of the adults was carefully scraping a hide with a stone tool, while another arranged various plants in distinct piles. The juveniles, roughly 4 feet tall with lighter, almost auburn fur, stopped their play to stare at us. The adults turned too, their postures instantly alert and defensive. Echo made a series of complex vocalizations, clicks, deep rumbles, and whistles that rose and fell in pitch. The tension visibly eased from the group he had introduced me. "A family unit," I whispered, my scientific mind racing to catalog what I was seeing even as emotion threatened to overwhelm me. "A social structure." The winter of 1992 brought heavy snow to the Olympics. Blanketing the mountains in drifts that reached 6 feet in some valleys, I had modified my cabin with additional insulation and supplies, preparing for the isolation that came with these storms. Echo and his family had moved to their winter shelter, a system of connected caves on the leeward side of the ridge that offered protection from the harshest winds. During a brief weather window in late January, I made the arduous trek to check on them. The journey, that normally took 3 hours, stretched to nearly 7 as I navigated snowdrifts and ice-laden branches. When I finally reached their winter territory, I found Echo waiting at our usual meeting point, his massive frame silhouetted against the snow-covered rock face. Something was wrong. His posture, normally fluid and composed, was rigid with tension. He led me immediately to the cave entrance, making urgent vocalizations I hadn't heard before. Inside, I found Granite lying on a bed of dried ferns, his breathing labored, a deep gash visible across his upper arm and shoulder. "What happened?" I asked, kneeling beside the injured Bigfoot. Echo's response chilled me. Through our established communication system, he conveyed a narrative that shattered my understanding of their isolated existence. Men had come, armed men with tracking equipment, not hikers or rangers, but a specialized team moving with purpose. Granite had been observing them from a ridge when they spotted him. Unlike most humans who would react with shock or flee, these men had pursued him methodically. The wound was from a projectile. Not a bullet, but something that had grazed him and torn the flesh. I treated the injury as best I could with my field medical kit and the plant poultices Willow had already applied. As I worked, Echo retrieved something from a recessed portion of the cave, a small metal object with a blinking light, a tracking device. "They tagged him," I whispered, horror washing over me. "They're studying you." Over the following weeks, as Granite recovered, I pieced together a disturbing reality. The men Echo described matched no official Forest Service or research team profiles. Their equipment, black tactical gear with no identifying markings, suggested military or private contractors. Most disturbing was their behavior. No photographs, no excited chatter upon encountering a supposedly mythical creature, just cold, efficient pursuit. This wasn't first contact. This was monitoring. In April 1993, I made a decision that would forever alter my life's trajectory. Using connections from my academic days, I requested access to historical Forest Service archives, claiming to be researching indigenous land use patterns. What I found hidden within mundane logging permits and wildlife surveys was evidence of something extraordinary. A classified program dating back to 1952 called Operation Primeval, buried in coded language about unidentified bipedal fauna specimens and containment protocols, was the truth. The government had known about Bigfoot for decades. They had documented territories, behavioral patterns, and even captured specimens. A map marked with red circles throughout the Pacific Northwest revealed monitoring zones. One of those circles encompassed precisely the valley where Echo's family lived. I felt physically ill as I read clinical descriptions of biological sampling and specimen containment. These weren't monsters being hunted. They were an indigenous North American hominid species being systematically studied and controlled without a single word ever reaching the scientific community. When I returned to Echo, I brought photographs of the documents. Though he couldn't read English, he recognized the maps immediately. Through our communication system, he revealed the truth I had feared. Members of his kind had been disappearing for generations. The younger ones, like Luna, had never known a time when they didn't hide from humans. Echo led me to a secluded ravine 5 miles from their winter cave. There, partially obscured by decades of forest growth, lay the rusted remains of a cage large enough to hold an adult Bigfoot. Nearby, I found shell casings and decomposed remnants of equipment bearing military markings from the 1960s. "They've been hunting you," I said, my voice breaking. "And I've been documenting exactly how to find you." That night, I burned 17 years of research notes and began anew. Not as a scientist studying subjects, but as a defender recording crimes against an undiscovered people. The years moved like shadows across the mountains, each season bringing new worries as the modern world encroached further upon Echo's territory. By 2018, at 77 years old, my joints protested the hikes that once came easily, but I maintained our connection. Visiting at least twice monthly, Echo too showed signs of age. Silver streaking his russet fur, movements slightly less fluid, though no less powerful. Luna had matured and departed the family group in 2006, following the natural dispersal pattern I documented. The absence left a palpable emptiness, though Echo communicated she had joined another family group further north. Storm remained, now fully grown at just over 8 feet tall, having developed into a thoughtful being who showed a particular interest in my notebooks and recording equipment. The first sign of trouble came on a crisp October morning when I returned to my cabin to find the door unlocked. Nothing obvious was missing, but items had been subtly displaced. Papers rearranged, my computer showing signs of access. Most disturbing was the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne lingering in my study. 3 days later, my landline rang at 2:17 a.m. "Dr. Harrison," the voice said without introduction, "your retirement project has attracted attention. Some doors should remain closed." The line went dead before I could respond. I spent the remainder of the night checking windows and doors, my heart racing with each creak of the aging cabin. During my next visit to Echo, I found him unusually agitated. Through our now sophisticated communication system, he conveyed disturbing news. Strange men had been placing small devices throughout the forest. Cameras disguised as bark, motion sensors embedded in rocks. With impressive detail, he mimicked their methodical movements and tactical positioning. "They're creating a surveillance grid," I realized aloud, cold dread settling in my stomach. 2 weeks later, returning from town, I discovered fresh tire tracks leading halfway up my private drive before turning around. My mailbox had been opened, its contents rifled through. Inside the cabin, though nothing was visibly disturbed, I found my secure external hard drive blinking. Someone had attempted access while I was gone. The warning could not have been clearer had it been painted on my walls. That night, I began preparations. I digitized my most critical research. Encrypting it across multiple devices, I created physical backups on waterproof paper, sealed in containers buried at coordinates only I knew. Most importantly, I began recording this testimony, documenting everything I had witnessed over 47 years. My final meeting with Echo came during a thunderstorm in April 2022. The ancient Bigfoot appeared from the mist as lightning illuminated the mountainside, his massive silhouette briefly frozen against the dark conifers. Despite the weather, he had ventured unusually close to the forest edge bordering human territory. Something he never did without grave reason, his agitation was immediately apparent. Through urgent gestures and vocalizations, he conveyed that multiple human groups were converging on their territory. Not just the usual monitoring team, but new forces. Some in official capacity, others moving with the precision of military training, but without identification. Most alarmingly, Echo indicated they had captured Storm during a foraging expedition 3 days earlier. The young male had been tranquilized and transported away in a covered vehicle. Echo had tracked them for 7 miles before losing their trail at a paved road. "I'll help find him," I promised, my voice breaking. "I'll expose everything." Echo's response silenced me. With deliberate movements, he conveyed what I had feared since discovering Operation Primeval. This wasn't just about scientific discovery or resource exploitation. Some secrets were kept because they challenged humanity's place in the natural order. Evidence of another intelligent hominid species sharing our continent would upend anthropological understanding and raise uncomfortable questions about rights, territories, and coexistence. As we parted in the rain, Echo pressed something into my palm. A carved stone pendant Storm had made, bearing symbols I recognized as their family markers. The message was clear. If anything happened to them, someone needed to remember they existed. That night, I finalized my confession video arrangements, establishing automated protocols to release the footage if I failed to enter specific codes within 24 hours. I sealed the last of my journals, addressing them to colleagues who, despite skepticism, might have the courage to investigate. The scratching at my door began just after midnight. I record this final testimony on May 7th, 2022, knowing it may be my last communication with the world. The weight of Storm's carved pendant sits heavy in my pocket, a tangible reminder of what I've witnessed and what now stands to be lost forever. If you're watching this, then my contingency measures have been activated, which means I am likely dead or disappeared. To whoever finds this recording, there are critical materials you must locate. In the hollow of a Douglas fir, 3 miles northeast of my cabin at coordinates 47 degrees, 51 minutes, 14.2 seconds north, 123 degrees, 42 minutes, 19.8 seconds west, you'll find waterproof containers with my complete journals. Copies of key documentation are stored in a safe deposit box at Olympic Trust Bank in Port Angeles, under the name Thomas Blackwood. The access key is taped beneath my kitchen sink. Act quickly. These will be the first places they search once they realize my fail-safes have triggered. The threats began subtly. misplaced items, unexplained computer access, but escalated to explicit warnings. 3 days ago, a black SUV with government plates parked at my road's entrance for 6 hours. Yesterday, I found a surveillance device attached to my truck's undercarriage. These aren't the actions of skeptics targeting a delusional old man. They're the methodical operations of people protecting something worth killing for. I believe multiple agencies are involved. The tactical teams Echo described match private military contractor profiles, while others display the hallmarks of classified government operations. What began in the 1950s as Operation Primeval has evolved and splintered, with different entities pursuing varied agendas. Biological research, weapons development, territorial control, all centering on the secret that Bigfoot aren't myth, but reality. The most crucial evidence is my DNA analysis comparing samples from Echo's shed hair with human genome mapping. The results, which I had verified by a trusted colleague under false pretenses, show something remarkable. We share significantly more genetic material than humans do with any known great ape. The Bigfoot species represents an evolutionary branch that split from our own relatively recently, perhaps 700,000 years ago. They are, by any scientific definition, people. This is why Storm was taken. This is why my life is forfeit. The existence of another intelligent hominid species with territorial claims to vast regions of North America presents legal, ethical, and economic complications no government or corporation wishes to confront. To Dr. Margaret Chen at the University of British Columbia. The genetic samples and analysis are in the location we discussed during the Vancouver Symposium. To Robert Takahashi at the Environmental Defense Fund. The geographic mapping data and population estimates are hidden where we once watched meteor showers. You both thought I was speaking metaphorically all these years. I wasn't. Echo's final message, conveyed to me during our last meeting, haunts me most. Through our developed communication system, he shared what generations of his kind have observed about humans. They've watched us build civilizations and destroy them, create wonders and commit atrocities. They've chosen isolation not from fear alone, but from a profound understanding that our species lacks the wisdom to properly wield its power. We see you, his message translated. We always have. Your kind forgets what it means to be part of the world rather than its master. The window in my study just shattered footsteps approach across broken glass. I have perhaps minutes remaining. To whoever finds this, I am not insane. I am not fabricating. For 47 years, I lived alongside beings our science refuses to acknowledge. Their existence challenges not just our anthropological understanding, but our ethical frameworks. If Storm still lives, find him. If Echo's family survives, protect them. The door to my study is opening. I've said what matters most. This is Dr. James Harrison. Remember us.